Right. I want to say a few things about these Zoomers crying their eyes out about consoles are dying because of the Xbox hybrid console that might run Windows under the hood. Zoomers, it's time to grow up and realize you need to open your mind to the perspectives of your elders who were actually around to as grown-ups to see what you experienced as kids. Brass tacks time for any Zoomer crying about the death of consoles. Consoles are not dying, they're the standard setter. If anything's dying, it's PC gaming, because PC has been becoming more and more like console for a very long time now. So, let's get down to brass tacks for you Zoomers. So, what you call a console most likely began with your childhood 360 or PS3. By the time the 360 and the PS3 were ascendant, consoles were already turning into stripped-down computers. The last classic consoles, as we knew them, those of us who came before you, were the GameCube and the PS2. The original Xbox technically competed with those two, but it came with a hard drive standard and broadband standard. So it was essentially an internet-connected computer back then. And if you look at, for example, the Xbox On documentary series, where that's floating around on YouTube about the history of Xbox from the original Xbox to when the series consoles came out, you'll find that Xboxes have been stripped-down computers since the very beginning, not just with the hardware and the more standardized hardware they were based on. The original Xbox was technically Pentium 3 based, but less proprietary than the PlayStations of the era, easier to develop for, easier to figure out, easier to port between Xbox and PC. So, and then standard hard drive, standard broadband adapter. It had the same features as a computer. It just ran a version of Windows that was so stripped down it could only be used for Xbox. But we've seen since then the stripped down Windows heritage of Xbox OSs. We've seen the dashboard on 360 start looking like Windows 8, and then the UIs on the Xbone and the Series consoles look like stripped down Windows 10. You know, we've seen all of this. We've seen all the style cues and the way things work and stuff like that. And now with Windows 11 being challenged by SteamOS, the question is, how much will Microsoft turn Windows 12 into a scalable OS similar to a very flexible Linux distro, where you can turn parts of the operating system on and off as you need them? And so they could install Windows 12 and have it run a console for Xbox, and then you can boot into a desktop environment to do computery stuff or use other storefronts. The Linux world has had this for years, where your graphics UI was optional. Some people I remember who were trying to get me to use Linux like 20 years ago bragged about how they brought back the DOS days, and they were using console commands and command prompts for everything. It had lower overhead than running a graphics UI. So they didn't even bother with a desktop half the time. And let's also not forget the swappable desktops, whether it's KDE or GNOME or any other one that's come out since then. I'm a bit dated on Linux stuff because I haven't played with it on a regular basis in about 20 years, since the days of Linux, Mandrake, and Ubuntu. But I was a big fan of Kubuntu, which used KDE. So so I'm kind of restricted with my prior background with using Linux on a desktop. But we've seen SteamOS become a gaming-focused version of Linux that is challenging Windows in terms of performance, and it's coming on things like the Steam Deck as the standard OS. Microsoft may very well need a modular version of Windows where you turn OS components on and off in order to compete and get that performance back. So I'm thinking Windows 12 can be run on a console, or like the next double, like the hybrid Xbox that everybody keeps talking about, or you can put it on your gaming PC and choose to boot right to your games and only start Windows if necessary. Something to think about. The thing is, though, and this is the part that you Zoomers are too young to remember, PC gaming used to be a hell of a lot more distinct from console gaming. So today, these things we have, like sharing controllers with consoles, are a luxury that did not exist. I first got into PC gaming at the beginning of the millennium. I was a college student trying to get through college on a shoestring budget, buying my PC games at Kmart. Yeah, we're going back. And I basically had to, the reason why I became a PC gamer, I had a Nintendo 64, but I left it at home because I didn't want to lug a TV out to campus in addition to my 17-inch tube monitor. There might not be the space for it in the dorm rooms, and it would be heavy and cumbersome, and I probably wouldn't use the TV too often, because I'd be busy doing work on my computer for school. So the idea of a computer as an all-in-one box was a huge, huge draw to me as a college student. So that got me into PC gaming. My first controller on PC was a proprietary Radio Shack thing. Some of you may have seen it in my older videos. It had lots of configurable switches because it was in no way, shape, or form standardized, and it ran off of the game port on my sound card. It had what looked like a parallel IDE connector, but it plugged into your sound card, which had an extra port back then called the game port. I didn't have a USB controller until I fooled around with the Logitech Wingman Action Pad and the Logitech Wingman Rumble Pads. Look them up. There's YouTube videos from like 10, 11, 12 years ago of unboxings of those. The controllers that I had as a PC gamer back before consoles and PCs started coming together were far inferior to their console counterparts. Even the Logitech Rumble Pad that I played Vice City with versus the DualShock on the PlayStation 2, it was obviously a knockoff, and it sucked. Everything sucked. Your games sucked too, because they'd be strangled with DRM. Hence ARMEG21's fame, the late great ARMEG21's famous/infamous rant about how copy protection screws over PC gamers. And it screwed me over in the long run. Recently, my disc games have finally gone obsolete. The Securom and the other stuff from Windows XP will not work right on Windows 11, and I can't even install my own games anymore because of copy protection. Fortunately, I've been able to rebuy for pennies on the dollar newer digital versions of pretty much all of my games except Battlefield 1942. Sadly, I had to go to an abandonware site for that. What an embarrassment. I'll buy and play a remake though if DICE makes one. But yeah, so it wasn't as good back then. And PC gaming has been getting console-ified very slowly for the past 20 years. The first real flashpoint that I remember was Elder Scrolls Oblivion, when people criticized the UI for pandering too much to Xbox players. That the UI for Morrowind was more PC-centric for keyboard and mouse, but beginning with Oblivion, the UI wasn't as user-friendly because controllers had to use it on the 360. So, yeah, it's there were the beginnings of that there. Steam moved towards digital games. Steam moved us towards digital games, centralizing the DRM within the Steam client. GOG offered DRM-free games and retro games, including DOS games sold with bundled copies of DOSBox that were perfectly tuned for whatever old game you were playing. I always liked that. But what I've seen, especially in the 2010s, is that PC gaming and console gaming have been coming together. Even before these wonderful consoles with the PlayStation 5 and the Series X that we have here in the 2020s. The 2010s consoles were weak and underpowered, so I didn't bother with them. But I've noticed since playing catch-up that PS4 and PS5 share each other's software. There is no more generational proprietary nonsense. So some people are complaining about that. Sadly, guess what? They're Zoomers. There's Zoomers out there complaining that PS5 hasn't had enough platform exclusives versus PS4. Thing is, though, you didn't lose your PS4 library going over to PS5, especially if it's digital. So, and depending on what you're playing, other than the label on the front, you might not even care that it's PS4 if it runs 60 frames a second on your PS5. And then Xbone went from Betamax player to Wimpy computer and stuff like that. And now the series consoles can play the Xbone games better. And of course, there's games that are backward compatible on from the 360 that are playable digitally on the series consoles. But just the fact that newer hardware doesn't destroy your old game collections, that's traditionally a PC thing. Maybe not as much with disc games anymore because of the unfortunate reality of copy protection that we were all making fun of 20 years ago. But the Steam generation, There are 20-year-old games on Steam that still work on modern Windows, and they're fun to play on modern Windows. So the idea of losing all your games when you upgrade your hardware, that's a thing of the past. That's something that has come over from PC gaming. And it's something that you should be glad the consoles are doing. And on the flip side, standardized controllers. So not only we have X input, we have Steam input, we have all kinds of things. After 20 years, I can finally get rid of that Logitech Rumble Pad because I can play Vice City on Steam with one of these, thanks to Steam input. So there's so many wonderful things that exist now that didn't even exist 10 years ago. Consoles have been the standard setter, though. The progression of PC games has been to become more like consoles, not the other way around. I've probably described the only real ways that PC gaming has come over to the consoles, from hardware design to standardized software that can travel with you to the next generation instead of being locked on old hardware that you now have to keep alive, kind of like what we have with PS3 and the Cell processor, as well as the Xbox 360. And of course, with the Cell processor, the PS3 games on PlayStation's subscription service have to be streamed. They can't be downloaded because of the differences of Cell versus modern processors. Today's consoles are more standardized, which is PC, which just came over from PC, and the whole just buying a new SKU and getting better graphics came over from PC. For the most part, though, the consoles have always been the standard setter. You know, when myself and other PC gamers, if we bought our proprietary inferior PC controllers in the days before we started having adapters to change them over to USB and stuff, like the Xbox 360 hockey puck and the like, in the days before console and PC controllers started coming together, I actually designed my first gaming PC, the Silver Bullet, as you all know, to operate like a gaming console that I plugged PC controllers into and played games like Grand Theft Auto. And I destroyed my USB ports on my brand new case on my first self-built computer ever in under 6 months. Today, we have things standardized over Bluetooth. Not this. That's a Retro Fighters PS3 controller. But this, yes, standardized over Bluetooth. You can get a dongle. Some software might require a dongle if it's like really old PC game, but I have a third-party knockoff of one of those for games like Subnautica and the like, where the PC ports is still looking for a specific 360 controller or something. But now that I have a 360 hockey puck, I might not need that adapter anymore. I'll just play with some 360 controllers and rechargeable NIM battery. So the standardized hardware is cool. The standardized hardware is cool. Not losing your games when you move on to new hardware and actually getting performance improvements with better hardware is cool. But that's really the extent of where PC gaming has affected consoles. On the flip side, simple devices that make it easy to get into and change games are far preferable to you turn your computer on and the hard drive churns for 20 minutes before you can reasonably do anything, like in the bad old days. And if things boot faster, and I think the Series X was a win when it comes to UI with the UI on it because of the quick resume. Especially if you play a lot of sports games. Maybe you want to play like a bunch of different sports games at once. Single player, maybe. I don't know. And you can flip between them like changing TV channels. I like that with a lot of the EA sports games on Series X. That's for sure. Works better than the switcher on the PS5. That's for sure. Made some PlayStation people jealous when they first really started taking advantage of it. But the simplicity, even if at the expense of performance, has been awesome. But that's the standard setter. Guess what PCs have been doing while consoles have been progressing in terms of what they can do while keeping things simple, becoming more and more like consoles. Steam Big Picture Mode, making PCs more like consoles. The upcoming full screen version of the Xbox app, becoming more like consoles. Game launcher apps like Play Night, becoming more like consoles. You can auto boot them full screen and use a controller, making Windows more controller friendly, so you don't even need a keyboard and mouse, following after consoles. Consoles are always the standard setters, and since we know that Xbox was running off a stripped down version of Windows, if Microsoft makes Windows 12 into something modular that could run on your next Xbox, or you can turn on the desktop and use either your next Xbox or your computer like a gaming PC, then why not? So the history is not that consoles die. The history is that consoles set the standard. We got it right with your generation. Console, there are some drawbacks like developers releasing buggy games to patch them later. But for the most part, console development over the past 20 years has been a standard setter for literally everybody else. Gaming PCs, people enjoy the simpler console experience and want that, but with the improved graphics of buying their own graphics card. Gaming handhelds, consoles running Windows. The freaking ROG box, that's my name for the Xbox Ally and Ally X, PC acting like a console. We'll see it with the hybrid console too. The consoles are the standard setters, not PCs. PCs have been losing their proprietary and all the things that used to make PC gaming unique to become more like the consoles. And some people have liked that more than others. I'm one of the people that likes it. Some people don't. Some people like tweaking with their games all the time. But I don't mind having like presets for everything, like low, medium, high, ultra. I don't mind that. For many games, when I get the hardware to max out, I just turn everything all the way up and have a blast that way. But, folks, consoles are not going to die. Xbox has always been the underdog. It has never been as popular as the PlayStation worldwide. It appeared to be successful with the 360, but it got hamstrung by Red Ring, and PlayStation 3 hamstrung itself with the early years and how tough it was to have a console that expensive. So, but the thing is, PlayStation ultimately won at the end of the generation, selling more PS3s than Xbox 360s. So Xbox has always had to be the underdog that fights back. Same thing, too. I mean, yeah, Don Matrick and the whole TV thing kind of hamstrung Xbox. But I'm sick and tired of the doom and gloom and funeral bells for Xbox. The only thing about modern Xbox that bugs me is Microsoft using them as a piggy bank with that 30% requirement to suck money out of them to fund things like their AI push and stuff like that. So that's the only thing that bugs me about modern Xbox is being used as a piggy bank for the rest of Microsoft. But as far as the hardware goes and as far as the progression to a hybrid console goes and the idea of a console running Windows, there's already a console running Linux. It's called the Steam Deck. Valve is working on a console, something more powerful but less portable for the living room. So the fusion of consoles and PCs is not just a Microsoft thing. It's just that whatever works. And that's what we've been hammering out for the past 20 years. There's some things on the PC side that have worked better. But today, PCs cost more for better graphics. And that's the extent of it. When the paywall for multiplayer goes away on console, like with what I'm hearing about the next Xbox, when that paywall goes away, there'll be another thing that just works. Find a way to deliver value for online services like Game Pass or something some other way instead of charging for multiplayer. It's the progression of things. And from this PC gamer's perspective, it is things getting better. I like the simplification of PC gaming. I like the idea that there's finally going to be a hardware baseline so you can spend a certain amount of money to get your foot in the door on PC gaming instead of having it fluctuate based on what game you're playing. Consoles have had that for a long time. PCs have not. I'll be glad to finally see that. So, it's time, Zoomers, for you to realize you've had it really good. Your forebears left you a very good gaming world that has only gotten better. Don't let the greed of certain live service games, blot out the rest of the history of what's happened in the past 20 years, or past quarter century at this point. I will take today's 2020's gaming hardware scene way more than being able to jump in a time machine and go back to PC gaming being very divergent from consoles with hardware that didn't run as well. Processors ran hotter. The freaking ATX standard had to be modified for certain Pentium 4s and Athlons in the early 2000s because things ran too damn hot. I like Monolith over there off camera more than the Silver Bullet. It runs better. It's better designed, better engineered. I like the technology that's in it. 2020s blows away 2010s and 2000s. It's progress. Be happy for what you have and enjoy it. If companies get unethical, that's something we always have to speak up about. It's called being a consumer. But don't go crying and whining about the death bells of consoles or gaming or anything, or your childhood slipping away. It's the progression of technology. And at some point, you're going to realize, yeah, your childhood had problems, just like the rest of us did. Hopefully, this video has been enlightening. Because believe me, you're 20-something now. When you're 40-something, it's going to feel like you just blinked and you went into middle age. I know a few things about that. But there's way too much negativity about the state of gaming. Consoles and PCs, they've been coming together for decades. That's the story of your life, Zoomers, whether you like it or not. That's the way the market has gone. That's the way the technology has gone. If you want to go back to N64 or PS1 or PlayStation 2, go noodle around a thrift store or eBay or something. But I like what we have. I like what we have, and I like where it's going. You folks should take a deep breath, come along for the ride as well. This is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.